We are back working with arrays number 3, and this particular section is going to talk about how to insert those 30 new elements. So we have an original array, the list that may be resized, and then we have our new elements inserted. Looks like I need to hit a enter sign there. And so when we are working with this one, a couple of things. I understand now that my list is getting resized appropriately, so I'm going to I'm not going to output the resized list at this time, just to save a little bit of screen space, because I know that that routine is working okay. And so if we execute this code, and we have the original list, and then we should show that it was resizing, and we have a new size of 146, and then the new elements are inserted. So if you take a look, the number 3 was inserted before 4, and if I look, 12, 13, and 17 were all inserted before 19, etc. That's the goal. That's what we want this to kind of look like when we're done. And I'm not going to probably give you all the code on this. I'll talk through quite a bit of it and explain some issues that I had along the way, but I will talk through some of the logic that's involved in this. So the first thing is we want to create 30 new elements. Well, I didn't do that to begin with. I just started with 3 to see if I could get that to work correctly. And then I needed those elements to be between up to 255, and so I created my random number from 1 to 255. I did not include 0. I honestly don't remember if I needed to. So if I needed to include 0, then I need to change this to 256 and back this off to 0. And then I created a method called insert. And here's where it differs from the original instructions. On this insert method, because we are using static methods and because we're not writing everything inside main, we need to send in not only the element, which is the random number that was generated, we also need to send in or need to track the end of our current array. Like right now, this index here is at 49. And so the end index, which is 50, I want to go up to but not include 49. So I set an end index variable at 50. Okay, so that also gets sent in. And then every time I add or insert an element, I need to increment the last index. Current marker is maybe would be a better way to say it. It's the marker where that value is currently at. Because every time I add an element, then I need to shift along in the new array so I can insert or actually process the whole entire array. The other thing that I sent in, if I take a look at my insert, was the actual array. And so arrays here, because I wasn't regenerating an array, I wasn't doubling its size and reassigning it, I can pass this in and it will work by reference. And so that was one issue that I also had to work with between the resizing and between inserting these elements. On the resizing, I couldn't just pass this by reference because of the fact that I actually created a brand new array inside that method. I had to then send a new, basically that new array back and assign it to nums locally here. That was an issue that I had to overcome earlier because I kept trying to send that back by reference and it was not working. But it will work to send this by reference here because it will change. We're not changing the actual, we're not creating an actual new array inside the method. So the logic inside insert num is kind of goes something like this. I need to, and actually let me do some printing on the screen so we can see the logic. If you take a look at the right hand side of the screen, I am taking the original array and I'm inserting 30 new elements. This one didn't have to be resized because it had a size of 91. But what I did here was the new number that was generated was 250, so that's what I want to insert. And I'm inserting it at target 49. And that makes sense because the original 250 is actually after the 248. And so actually, this shows an error in my logic because the 248 should come before 250. So I've got an off by 1 error somewhere in my code, but we will deal with that a little bit later. And I had problems with this one. It actually occurs at the very, very end. And I just edited some of my code, so I might have messed up what I had fixed. But this is, so I have an error when it's actually the last element, but let's look at the other ones. So then 65 is going to be inserted, and the target is the locations that it's at. So each of these are printed off by 10. So this is 10 in each row. So this goes through an index of 9. This first index over here is 10. This index here is 20. 140 is at 30, etc. So if this is 10 and I go 11, 12, index 13, 65 should be inserted at, and it got inserted at index 13 is what it's happening. So the target value is I am locating, I have to do a search. I'm doing a linear search to find the index where it needs to be inserted. And so that's my target value. And I do that inside my method to do an insert. So the first thing that I do inside my insert method is I find where should this go. And so this one should have returned a target of 50. And so that's, I have an error at the end of my array there. But look at the next one. I want to insert 116 and it's at target 24. So if I take a look, 116 looks to be in order and that's at target. This is 20 because this was 20. So I've got 0 through 9. This is 10, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So I am finding the index where the value should be inserted, and then I insert it at that location. The trick with inserting it without using built-in, well, I don't have built-in array list commands because these are arrays. So what I have to do every single time is, and if I actually start at the end of the array. So if I were to insert a fourth element, what I do down here is I take 248 and I move it over. I move 250 into the 248th spot. I take 240 and I move it into the 250th spot. Basically, I shift everything in the array down by 1, and then I assign my new element in the proper location. So in order to get 116 over here in the proper location, I took all of these elements here and I moved them or shifted them to the right or shifted them down, however your brain likes to think of it, down 1. The trick for doing that is that you actually start at the end of the array. If I were to just do one insert, for example, and let's execute this. And so the number to be inserted was 21 at target 5. What I did, and so 21 got inserted here. And 21 was an original value, so now I have two 21s. And so that's what happens if you have duplicate values, is you go ahead and insert it. But what I did was every single one of these array elements I shifted down. But I started at the end of the array, which is why we have to track this end index over here. So what I did was I started at the 50th index, which is right here, and I moved 246 into the 50th index. And then I shifted 243 down to the 49th index, etc. And I basically moved everything over, all of these elements here. I moved down 1 or to the right 1, again, however you want to think of it. And then I inserted my target, my number 21, into that index. So I'm inserting 21. It says at target 5. The reason I call it target 5 is that's the variable that I used when I found the location that I needed. So maybe a better name instead of target would have been location. Okay, so my algorithm, and I'm going to write the pseudocode for that for you. I'm not going to actually share that code with you. You guys will then have to write that code. But basically what that code is going to do, you're going to write an insert method. You're going to send in the number, which would have been like 21, and you're going to send in the end index, so we know where the current end of the array is, and you're going to send in the array. Then you're going to shift, starting at the end of the array, all the elements, well actually inside, you're going to find the target or the index where that number should be inserted. For example, we found index 5 is where the number 21 should have been at. So the target value is actually my new index, okay? And then you're going to shift everything to the right, and the very last thing you do then is assign this value to that location that you wanted it stored in. And that's the algorithm that you will use in order to insert those new elements. So you're going to basically have to do a linear search to find the index where it's supposed to go. You copy or move all array elements down, starting at the end and working your way back up to the index that you want. And then you insert the number 21 at the appropriate index value. And yours will be, it won't be number 21, it'll be something different, but you get the idea. I will give you some pseudocode for that. I will post the code that I have written so far here with the pseudocode in it, so then you guys will be able to finish up that project.